Okay, what's up, everybody? We're live. My name is Damon. This is Newspaper Liturgy Live, and I'm trying this out. Like I said in the last week, I used to do a lot of newspaper liturgy stuff. That's how my channel started, and I want to do it live to, as this channel grows, we can even get a little bit of live interaction going. But today we're going to talk about how to spot hashtag fake Christian. And yes, I'm hashtagging it very intentionally there, referring to this Twitter business after Mike Pence visited our concentration camps. But wait, they're detention centers, Damon, not concentration camps. What are you talking about? There's no Jews being killed by Nazis there. Come on now. Now, we're going to get deeper into this, but first, let's talk about Mike Pence. Who is Mike Pence? And as if you've been watching my videos, you've seen one of the recent ones was a reason people leave the church that is rarely talked about, or a reason that is rarely talked about for people leaving the church. And the reason I talked about was this realization that so much of the modern mission and message of the evangelical church is aligned with the mission and message of global capitalism. Completely aligned. And this occurred through so much deception that we could look within history. I love this whole idea of deconstruction and talking about deconstruction and the importance of deconstructing faith, because you can literally look at all these doctrines and ways of thinking and doing things within your particular religion and tradition and see the points in history that these things began and the specific historical events they were reacting to. So I took a look back at a little bit of the religious right movement, the moral majority, started by conservative activist Paul Weyrich, who was trying to find ways to mobilize the growing evangelical movement. And he thought, oh, religious freedom, that's a good one, because I've tried issue after issue after issue. Nobody's paying attention. Religious freedom, because these Southern private Bible colleges are still segregating against Black people, even though segregation was illegal like a decade before. They're still getting away with it there. So it's like, oh, the government wants you to stop segregating? That's a case of religious freedom. Didn't really last that long, but that's how it got the attention of people like Jerry Falwell. And then they switched their focus to abortion years after the Roe v. Wade decision. And now they'll say the religious right movement started because we solved the horror of Roe v. Wade and we knew we had to do something. During Roe v. Wade, they didn't care. So one of the people, so it's like he convinced so many pastors to start talking about this stuff and to then therefore align themselves with the Republican Party. And then by using Ronald Reagan as their own personal puppet, that's how they established the religious right. And it established evangelicals as a powerful voting force, which then put in Bush and then put in Trump. And so one of the people, though, a part of this whole world is Mike Pence. Who was one of the people. You can look up the videos of Paul Weyrich and see these old videos from like the 80s of people talking up Paul Weyrich, and one of them is Mike Pence. He's in there. And so it's so interesting to me when we can look at history and see, oh yeah, people started saying certain things for certain reasons in reaction to other things, and here we are now. And Mike Pence was part of the beginning of the very deceptive moral majority movement, or as a lot of their kids called it, according to Kent Dobson, the immoral minority movement. And so Mike Pence, who's always talking about how much of a Christian he is, then goes and visits these concentration camps. I'm calling them concentration camps because that's what they are. Hundreds of people who have actually studied the concentration camps during the Holocaust agree. Yeah, that's totally what these are. And part of the importance of studying what happened in the Holocaust and how we got there is to notice patterns when we start getting closer to that again. And it's like, if we just talk very literally here, these are camps where people are held unlawfully, because if you don't know, people are only supposed to be there for like a couple days and then have their court hearing where they can talk about their immigration status. But instead, people are being held for months. Kids in particular, there's a specific law that says kids are only supposed to be held in this temporary facility for 72 hours. And while they're there, it needs to be clean and sanitary and safe. And it's not clean, not sanitary, not safe, and they're being held for months and months. And this is why people like certain Democrats have called it a manufactured crisis, because Trump's response is to say, oh, the real problem here is that they're all coming here. That's the problem. Not how we're treating them when they come here, but that they're coming here. And it's this manufactured crisis to get Democrats to agree with him, to put up a wall or to have very hawkish immigration policies. And it's so interesting because one of the ways that they talk about this too is like, watch. Let me look this up real quick. Let me read you Mike Pence first off. Mike Pence, when he first came back, posted some pictures, shaking hands with some officers, and that's it. No, none of the people were actually there. And it said, "Thank you to the brave men and women of CBP working tirelessly each day to secure our border. The work you do not only keeps our country safe, but keeps the American people safe. And we're so grateful for your service." Then CNN posted a story about Mike Pence going there, calling it concentration camps, and talking about how horribly treated these people were while he's there. And then Mike Pence tweeted, and this is kind of what started it all, him saying, "CNN is so dishonest. Today we took reporters to a detention facility on the border for families and children, and all told us they were being treated well. The crisis at our southern border is not a manufactured crisis. It is real, and it is overwhelming our system. To show this, we also visited an overcrowded facility for adult men, many of whom have been arrested multiple times. These men were in a temporary holding area because Democrats in Congress have refused to fund additional bed space. Rather than broadcast a full story showing the compassionate care the American people are providing to vulnerable families, tonight CNN only played video of men in the temporary facility and didn't play any footage of the family facility at all, ignoring the excellent care being provided to families and children. Our great CBP agents deserve better, and the American people deserve the whole story," from CNN. And then he posted some pictures with like 4 children. Just 4. It's like, let's put out a few nice looking ones, not the dirty ones, not the ones who are still wearing the same shirts that they had when they crossed the border and been wearing the same shirt for like a month and has stains of mucus and vomit. Not those ones. Let's show the ones that like just got here, are clean, don't really know what's going on, and have them be out there for this press thing where Mike Pence meets them. Very weird and deceptive, but I want you to, you could already, what I was going to say, you could already notice it here just by reading these tweets. One of the stages or one of the characteristics of fascism, I'm talking like legitimate orthodox fascism, is that they talk about their enemies as if, first off, that they're very weak and stupid and we are in full control. Everything is okay. They want to try to stop us, but they cannot. Everything is okay. Simultaneously, also talk about their enemies as an actual threat to their control, who are very strong, very powerful, very manipulative, can any day take away what we have, so we have to do something about it. This is the exact way that both Trump and Pence talk about immigrants. Absolutely. Or talk about Democrats, or talk about people who criticize them. And I lost the tweet real quick. But even in this tweet itself, he talks about how it's like, everything's fine. They're being treated well. They have wonderful conditions. And also says about these men were in temporary holding area because Democrats in Congress have refused to fund additional bed space. I thought everything was, now they need additional bed space. I thought you said everything was fine. And now you're admitting they need additional bed space. But when you do actually admit anything wrong going on there, it's the Democrats' fault, though. But when you admit anything good going on there, it's because of you. And Trump talks about it in the same way, where he says these camps are being or facilities, that's how I say it, these facilities are being beautifully run, treating them so well. And then we'll also say, sometimes even within the same speech or statement, it's terrible and it's so sad what's happening on the border, but it's because of the Democrats not allowing us to move forward on the wall that this is happening. This is legitimate characteristics of fascism. And so then after that, what started trending on Twitter is the hashtag fake Christian in reference to Mike Pence. Hashtag fake Christian. It's like, how can you call yourself a Christian and then act like this? Actually, the reason I have a Mary back here chilling today, I usually have either her and Mary or just Jesus, this little Mary icon back here, not because I'm Catholic, not because I'm Orthodox. I enjoy Orthodox icons. I enjoy elements of Catholicism, but I wanted to kind of remind everybody here of what story, if you're a Christian, reminds you of what story we're following here. Talking about a religion, a faith, a tradition, a way of being in the world that seeks to take care of children, not to abuse them, and understand there is never justification for that. And yet so many Christians have been manipulated and deceived into thinking that all of this is okay. And like I said, I talked a little bit about it in that video about global capitalism and stuff. But I want to read here a couple passages of scripture because I want to talk about this, calling out people for being a fake Christian. Initially, it may seem like, what are you doing, people? Are you trying to just be these cancel culture types who just want to, or are you trying to be these fundamentalist types like Westboro Baptist type people who go around saying, you're a fake Christian, you're a fake Christian, you're a fake Christian, you support gay marriage, you're a fake Christian. It's like for some people, the language of fake Christian can bring those memories of fundamentalists who told them because they are like want to be compassionate toward people, they're fake. But there is a little bit of value, I think, in calling people who are actually being fake Christians fake Christian. And I think Paul did that a little bit too. And so Paul, the Apostle Paul, writer of many of the letters in the New Testament. And so I want to talk about what an actual fake Christian is, and first start out by reading actually from John, not Paul. I'll read Paul next, but 1 John 4. 1 John 4, by the way, you ever hear somebody say God is love? This is where it comes from. It says, let us love one another because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. And then later goes on and say the same thing, saying, God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Later says, where are we at? Oh, right here. This is what I want to focus on. 1 John 4:19. We love because he first loved us, because God first loved us. Those who say, I love God, and hate their brothers or sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And this whole propaganda machine of talking about immigrants as if they're other, as if they're less than human, as if they deserve to be mistreated, and yet Americans deserve to have rights, but not them. That very much at the root of it is hate. Very much hate. Hating whole groups of people. It's so weird how Christians could do all this weird manipulation to try to justify hate. And it's funny, even Jesus makes sure that people don't go there too by throwing in, okay, I'm telling you to love everybody, I'm telling you to love people, but just in case you still get it confused, I'll also say love your enemies. Then you really can't twist this. But then they still end up twisting it anyway. Let's read real quick. First Corinthians 13. Another big one about love. You've probably heard First Corinthians 13 if you've ever been to a wedding. Oh, love is patient, love is kind stuff. Let's read that right before that. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 1. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. That's the part I want to focus on, but I'll read the next part too, the famous part. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. But this is really what I want to focus on, this idea of if I do this, if I do that, if I live an amazing life, I have prophetic powers, I can move mountains with my faith, I give away everything I have, I can speak the tongues of angels, but I don't love, I'm nothing. I'm just a clanging cymbal, a noisy gong. And I think about this a lot when I see people claiming that they're Christian and yet they seem to be so hateful, or they support policies that are hateful. It really sent me into a very legitimately depressing week when when we first started talking about this stuff at the border, and Jeff Sessions came out and said, well, you remember Romans says we got to follow the law of the land, and God put these leaders in place. This is the law of the land. If to be a Christian, sorry, there's put this incense on and now it's getting in my face. And let me try to, okay. And to be a Christian is to therefore support anything that we do because it's the law, which is also kind of weird because we've gotten to the point now where we're completely breaking the law. What's happening at the border is breaking the law. And but it's so weird how they could do that. It's especially ridiculous to say we're Christians, therefore we have to follow the law, especially because this dude we follow, Jesus, was executed by the state. Executed by the state as a criminal, put on a cross, publicly put to death, so to deter other minorities and oppressed people groups from standing up to the empire. And then all the people who chose to still follow Jesus and chose to follow Jesus after his death for hundreds of years were also executed by the state for it. Oh man, I wonder if I can pull up these memes. I want to show you some memes on my phone. I know a more professional way to do this is to do this through some sort of OBS system where I could just pull up a picture on the screen. I have one of those. Mine's not working right now. I don't know why. So we're going to do it the super janky way. I'm going to show you on my phone. Two quick memes real quick. This, luckily I'm on autofocus. This one, he should have obeyed the law. Yeah. Just to show you some hypocrisy. Another one, Jesus looking down at a soldier. Oh, you can't really read it. There you go. Jesus looking down at a soldier saying, "Thank you for your service." Socialist Christian, what's up? This person's in here. See, this is why I'm doing it live, so I can have a little bit of interaction here. Socialist Christian just commented saying, "Wasn't Paul arrested several times? I don't get the Romans argument." Yes, you're right. Fix it here. Paul was arrested several times. Know who else was arrested? Other Christians who we look back on and say, oh yeah, they were the right ones. I'm thinking of people like Bonhoeffer, who was a Christian in Nazi Germany and tried to fight against that and then was arrested and wrote several prison letters that we read today, that if you go to like a lot of conservative Christian bookstores, You usually can find something on Bonhoeffer and be like, oh yeah, he was so great for standing up to his government. But it's like several Christians at that time are like, why isn't he following the law? And then Martin Luther King Jr. is another great example, who was arrested. You could read his prison letters too. And at the time, several people were like, you're a Christian, segregation is the law, stop it. And now we look back in favor of MLK and say, yeah, he was the right one. And that's something that I try to talk about a lot on this channel too, when talking about ex-evangelical stuff, is like the people who do stand up to injustice within the church and leave and try to do something different, live a different way. During their time, they look like absolute heretical rebels trying to tear down the good and faithful, wonderful Jesus-led church. But then the future church looks back and says, oh yeah, they were correct. They were the right ones. And the church of their time were wrong. And I feel like we're in a kind of similar time. And then in the future, it's like they'll get it. But also, another example. Hold on, Another example was a man that I love. Saint Francis. Can I see it? Can you see it? Is it going to focus? No. Saint Francis of Assisi. Little prayer card here. I actually got this in Roseville this last weekend. I was visiting Roseville in California. I live in Santa Maria, California. And I went to this little Catholic bookshop, little Catholic gift shop. And I was looking around. And I saw these little prayer cards. I saw St. Francis of Assisi. I liked them a lot. I'm going to tell you a little bit why right now. But I decided to take this. The prayer in the back here is prayer for peace. This is a very famous prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Now, St. Francis actually didn't write this. Some people wrote it much later in the spirit of St. Francis. But the reason there even is a spirit of St. Francis, also Pope Francis named himself after St. Francis, is because of how much Christians have continued to love him. And so I went to buy this, and the cashier lady, saw that it was St. Francis, and she was like, oh, St. Francis, you can have that for free. God bless you. Which is so funny. It's like, I continue to see that everywhere. People love this guy. And it's like some people view it as like Jesus, St. Francis. And the reason is because he committed his whole life to service, poverty, helping the poor everywhere. Started a whole order called the Lesser Brothers, where they just were committed to humility and poverty. He was so committed to it that, like, if he ever saw someone around him that was more poor than he was, he had to immediately give what he had, and so that no one around him was poor. He couldn't, and because of this lifestyle, he ended up living only to around 30 years old, but he went down in history as like the most famous beloved saint. And his order of brothers still goes on. Franciscan monks are all over the place. Franciscans built the hospital in my city. There's a huge statue of St. Francis in front of it because of that. And so, but something that I've also become fascinated with St. Francis for this last couple of years during the Trump administration is that he lived his entire life during the Crusades in the 1200s, and birth to death, the Crusades were happening. And he lived in Italy, Assisi, which is very close to where the Pope was, in Rome. And it's like, I think to how it must have been in his time, and realize, oh yeah, during that period, if you ask people what's Christianity, they would just look and tell you what the Pope is doing with the Crusades. That's what Christianity is. And yet he said, no, that's not going to be how I roll. He chose to live completely differently, live closer to Jesus, try to actually live a life of the love that we're talking about here, instead of this colonizing Christianity. And I see the same thing today in the midst of all these awful colonizing Christians saying that all this violence done at the border is justified. There are people who say no. I'm not going to let you say that that's Christian. You're a fake Christian, my friend. That isn't what we're doing here. That isn't what I'm going to live out if I call myself a Christian or if I call myself a Jesus follower. And so when we call people out as a fake Christian, I'm very much against calling people out a fake Christian when it has to do with like beliefs. It's like what you believe on like the transcendence and immanence of God, or what you believe on like infant baptism or adult baptism, the days of whatever. That's irrelevant. But I think it's justified to call people out as fake Christians when they say they're Christian, but they don't. They live like the opposite. Or as Jesus said to the Pharisees, Isaiah was right when he said that you, by your lips you honor me, but your hearts are far from me. And when I think of that verse, I think of people like Mike Pence. I think of people like Donald Trump. I think of people like Jeff Sessions, Sarah Huckabee. These people who are just living awful lives and trying to use Jesus and scripture to justify it. And so that's what a fake Christian is. That's how to spot a hashtag fake Christian. And I believe that there is a path to follow. There's a stream, like 1 Corinthians 13, where he said, if I speak the language of angels and prophecies, but I do not have love, I'm just a clanging cymbal. I think we could say that about a lot of Christianity throughout history, who thought to themselves, how do we make disciples of all nations, like Jesus said? Colonize lands and kill people if they don't want to be Christian. That's clanging cymbal Christianity. But the people who say, how do we spread this stuff? Love people, serve people, do actual works of justice and change, have faith to change the system. That is kind of the base note of Christianity. Both streams continue, and the future always looks more fondly on the baseline of Christianity throughout. And so I call myself a Christian today because I still am following that stream instead of this clanging cymbal stream of Christianity. That's actually the last sermon series I did when I was a youth pastor in an evangelical church a few years ago. The last sermon series I did was about church history, and that was basically the theme throughout the whole thing, what I just said. And I didn't know it was going to be my last one when I did it. It's like when I realized I had to go, I left like a couple weeks after. And looking back, it's like kind of poetic of like the last sermon series I did was like, look how wide this Christianity thing is. Look at like in terms of like all over the world, but also all of history. And it's like almost as if I, through my actions, was like so big that I'm out of here. Because it's like the denomination I was part of, pastor friends saw it as like this flourishing tribe. I saw it as a restrictive corner that I had to be free from in order to live out this faith in a way that I felt was actually justified, actually faithful to the teachings and ways of Jesus. Yeah, so there you go. That's all I got to say. I believe Socialist Christian is still chilling here. Thank you for watching this live. Thank you for leaving your comment here. Anyone else who watched all the way up to this, leave your comments underneath this. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We're going to keep talking about this stuff. Let me know, too, if you're enjoying this newspaper liturgy live stuff. I'm going to try to keep doing it every week and do other videos throughout the week. So we got some more videos coming later this week. So, yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Peace out.